Are you looking for the best CPUs to dominate? In this video we will look at some of 7 best CPUs to dominate on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description. So make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Number 1. AMD Ryzen 7 7700X. When it comes to value, the AMD Ryzen 7000 series of CPUs stands at the top, offering incredible performance for not just a cheaper price, but also at lower power consumption. The AMD Ryzen 7700X, for that reason, is the ideal CPU for Naraka Blade Point. It has enough cores and threads to keep up with the action in the game. The CPU features 8 cores and 16 threads with a boost clock speed of 5.4 GHz. It has 32 MB of L3 cache, which is comparable to some much more expensive offerings from Intel. The AMD Ryzen 7700X can deliver all this performance at just 105W of TDP, which means a PSU as low as 600W will be sufficient to drive this CPU even if you overclock, of course, depending on the GPU that you have paired with it. Speaking of overclocking, this CPU supports AMD Expo memory overclocking technology and precision boost overdrive that lets you push it to its limit. Make sure you have a strong cooling system installed before you overclock. Even though the Ryzen 7000 series is a generation old, it is still very capable and future-proof thanks to support for PCIe 5.0. You also get onboard graphics with the Ryzen 7700X, which may not let you enjoy the game to the fullest, but can still run the game with playable performance. Number 2. Intel Core i5-13400F CPU. For just over $150, you can get excellent performance in Naraka Blade Point at up to 1440p, depending on the graphics card, with the Intel Core i5-13400F. It is an older generation CPU and a mid-tier offering from the series, which helps bring the cost down without sacrificing on real-world gaming performance, especially in a less demanding game like Naraka. The Core i5-13400F features 10 cores and 16 threads with a 6P core and 4E core configuration. It can boost up to 4.6 GHz, which by modern standards is on the lower side, but the high core count makes up for that. It is also not the most efficient CPU, drawing 148W under load, seeing as how the Ryzen 7 7600X can offer better performance at lower power draw, albeit at a higher cost. Since it is an F SKU, there is no support for overclocking, and it does not have an iGPU either. But you shouldn't need either to enjoy Naraka Blade Point. Number 3. AMD Ryzen 5 7600X. The AMD Ryzen 5 7600X is usually in the budget section for most games, but with something as non-demanding as Naraka, it stands as a solid mid-range offering. Regardless of the game, the overall value that this CPU offers cannot be matched. It comes with 6 cores and 12 threads with a boost clock speed up to 5.3 GHz. While the core count is on the lower side, it should be enough for an excellent experience in Naraka Blade Point. The Ryzen 5 7600X packs 32 MB of L3 cache, which, again, is higher than some of the more expensive Intel CPUs, and it only draws 105W of power, which means you will have plenty of power from the PSU for other components, and you can fit a more power-hungry GPU that pairs well with the 7600X. Along with onboard Radeon graphics, you also get support for overclocking, which can push this chip to performance levels closer to the more expensive Radeon 7700X. You still get PCIe 5.0 support and compatibility with all the latest technologies from AMD, such as AMD Expo Memory overclocking technology, Precision Boost Overdrive, Ryzen Master Support, and more. Number 4. Intel Core i9-14900K 24-core, 32-thread CPU. If budget is of no concern, and you want an all-round package that not only crushes any game, but also excels in productivity-related tasks, the Intel Core i9-14900K is what you should be looking at. Even though the 13th and 14th Gen CPUs saw some major performance issues, the company is confident that they can be solved with a patch. With that said, the performance that the Core i9-14900K offers is arguably the best on the market, only exceeded by its KS counterpart. The Core i9-14900K features 24 cores in an 8P-core and 16E-core configuration, accompanied by 32 threads. Not just a high core count, the CPU has impressively high core clocks boosting up to 6 GHz. It comes with 36 MB of Intel Smart Cache, which is still lower than the AMD Ryzen 7800X3D, but the sheer core count puts the Intel CPU ahead in terms of raw power. This also makes the Intel offering quite power-hungry, consuming around 253 W of total power under load. The Core i9-14900K is the CPU that you invest in to rest easy for several years to come, because it will be a powerful offering even with next-gen AMD and Intel CPUs on the market. It is, however, a significant initial investment that can be hard to justify for enjoying Naraka Bladepoint. Number 5. AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D. No matter the game, the AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D has become the CPU of choice when looking for the best performance. Designed by AMD with a focus on gaming, the Ryzen 7 7800X3D comes with 8 cores and 16 threads, with a boost clock speed of 5 GHz. While on paper, the core count and clock speeds are not that impressive, what makes the CPU a performance beast is the 96 MB of L3 cache, overclockability, and a 120W TDP. The X3D series of CPUs utilize AMD's 3D V-cache technology, which allows stacking higher capacity L3 cache on the die, without taking up lateral space. For gaming, a lot of games can take advantage of the higher CPU cache and run better as compared to other CPUs with lower cache. That being said, the Ryzen 7 7800X3D is overkill for Naraka Bladepoint, but for the best performance in the game, it is a great value option. The CPU comes with support for PCIe 5.0 peripherals and expansion devices, as well as a Radeon iGPU which should be able to run the game but nowhere close to what a dedicated GPU can do. The AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D can be purchased for under $400 and sometimes even around the $350 range, making it one of the best price-to-performance CPUs on the market. Number 6. Intel Core i5-14600K F14-core, 20-thread CPU. The 14th generation of Intel CPUs are extremely powerful, not just at the top tier but also in the middle of the pack. The Core i5-14600KF is a prime example of that, as it will deliver excellent performance in Naraka Bladepoint, competing with the performance of the AMD Ryzen 7700X and even beating it. It features 14 cores in a 6P-core and 8E-core configuration with 20 threads. The Core i5-14600KF has a boost clock speed of 5.3 GHz, which is quite impressive considering this CPU costs less than $300. It comes with 24 megabytes of Intel Smart Cache and can draw up to 181W, making it one of the more power-hungry chips. You also get support for PCIe 5.0 peripherals and the latest Intel technologies, such as Intel Deep Learning Boost, Speed Shift, Turbo Boost 2.0, and more.